Okay, let's start with a quick word association, just to get us going. If I say the word trust, what's the very first thing that comes to mind? No thinking, just the feeling.
For me,
Mm.
it's that trustful,
Yeah.
the one you do at team building
Oh,
things,
yeah.
you're just falling backwards and you have this complete expectation that someone's going to catch you. It's a feeling of solidity.
Right. Solidity. That's a good word. For me, it's more like a warm blanket or, being in the passenger seat of a car and just falling asleep
Hmm.
because, the driver's got it. We've sort of culturally agreed that trust means comfort. It means security. It's the absence of worry. If you trust, you're calm.
Which makes total sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the definition we all need to just, function as a society.
But, and this is a really big but, what if we're completely wrong? Or maybe just wrong when it comes to the relationships that matter the most. I've been reading this essay by the philosopher Pedro Malha. It's just called Trust. And he basically threw a wrench in my entire idea of what that word means. He says, when you're caring for another life, parenting mainly, but I think it goes broader, trust is not about safety.
It's the opposite.
It's the exact opposite. He says trust arrives as exposure.
Exposure. It's such a jarring word for that concept. It almost sounds dangerous.
It does, and that's really the hook. So we're not doing a how-to today. This isn't about getting your toddler to eat their vegetables. We're going to dive into the philosophy of what it actually means to hold a human life in your hands. We're looking at Mala's argument that trust is this heavy psychological architecture, a kind of structural pressure that we usually just mistake for anxiety.
This is one of those pieces of writing that it validates feelings you didn't even know you could put a name to. Malha is basically decoding the invisible work of parenting. He takes us from those terrifying, early hours all the way through what he calls overholding.
Which is a brilliant term. We'll get to that.
It's brilliant. And then finally to the long process of letting go.
So let's start right there. At ground zero, the arrival. Malha says trust begins the second a baby is placed in your hands. But it does not feel like that warm blanket I was talking about.
Not at all.
Yeah.
He describes that first phase of trust as almost purely practical. It's physical. Before you even get to the emotional stuff, you're just hit with the raw mechanics of survival.
Right.
You have to trust your own body to hold this tiny, fragile thing.
Right.
Trust yourself to feed it, to wake up when it cries.
Which is so weird, right? Because in that moment, you probably trust yourself the least you ever have. I remember leaving the hospital, that they just wheel you to the curb and wave. And I was thinking, wait, you're actually letting me take this? I don't have a license for this.
That's the exposure he talks about. You're suddenly forced to trust all these systems you don't really understand. You trust the car seat is built right. You trust the advice from a nurse you just met. You trust the walls of your house to not fall down. Malha says that in this phase, parents just cling to routines, to clocks and measurements.
Oh, the logs. I was obsessed. How many ounces, how many minutes of sleep? It felt like if I just measured everything, nothing bad could possibly happen.
And why do we do that? Malha's argument is that we do it because our intuition just hasn't kicked in. We're operating on a deficit. So we cling to the external data because the internal data isn't there yet.
Yeah.
But here's the key distinction he makes. This constant checking, this vigilance, he calls it tense and watchful.
Tense and watchful. I mean, that just sounds like stress.
It is stress.
Yeah.
But his whole point is that the tension is the trust. We think, oh, I'm so anxious, I must not be trusting the process. Malha says, no. That tension, that's the mechanism of care. It lives alongside fear, not instead of it.
So me standing over a crib late at night, literally just staring at my baby's chest to make sure it's moving, that's not me being a neurotic mess. That's me trusting.
Exactly. Well, not exercising it maybe, but embodying it. You're maintaining a vigil. You're keeping watch. Malha kind of suggests that if you were totally relaxed in those first few weeks, that might actually be the problem. The vigilance is the trust.
That reframing is huge. It really is. It just removes all the guilt. I think so many new parents feel guilty for being completely terrified.
And that terror, it comes from what Malha calls the asymmetry of trust. This is a concept I think we really need to dig into because it explains why it all feels so heavy for the parent.
Asymmetry. So just unbalanced. One side is heavier.
Yeah, think about it from the child's perspective versus the adult's. A baby trusts you completely. But does it have a choice?
No, none at all. They're totally dependent. They trust you because if they don't, they starve. It's pure biological need.
Right, it's instinct. For the child, trust is blind. But for the adult trusts with eyes wide open. Our trust is, and this is his phrase, shaped by an awareness of consequence.
Awareness of consequence. That's just the burden of knowledge, isn't it?
It is. You know what a car accident is. You know what a high fever means. You know how hard floors are. The baby knows none of it. So you're holding the entire weight of the world's danger for both of you. You're trusting the systems around you to hold while being acutely aware of how often they can break.
It's like you're watching a horror movie with someone who's never seen one before, and you know exactly when the jump scare is coming.
Hmm.
They're just sitting there, happily eating their popcorn, and you're all tensed up, just waiting for the bad thing you know is about to happen.
That's a perfect analogy.
Mm.
And that tensing up, Mala talks about how physical it is. He says this type of trust tightens the chest. It keeps your senses on high alert. It literally feels like strain.
He has that phrase, structural pressure. I love that because it implies it's not just a feeling in your head. It's like you're a beam bearing a load, like a bridge.
A bridge that's always being tested.
Mm.
And that brings us to how repetitive it is. Mala says parenting isn't one big act of trust. It's a loop, an endless loop.
The loop, it starts with just breathing, right? Then what happens?
Well, that's the same act of trust. It shapeshifts.
Yeah.
First, you trust them to breathe through the night. Then you trust them to walk across the room without splitting their head open. Then to cross the street. Then to go to a sleepover.
Then to drive a car.
Hey.
Then to move away.
It's the same emotional mechanic every time. You're releasing a little bit of control while trying to maintain care. You're constantly asked to widen the circle. Mala says we move from trusting them to survive to trusting them to return.
But let's be honest, sometimes you don't want to widen the circle. You want to shrink it. You want to bolt the doors and keep everybody right where you can see them. Malha has a specific term for when that vigilance goes into, like, overdrive, right?
He does. He calls it overholding.
Overholding. I have to say, I felt both seen and personally attacked when I read that part.
It's such a powerful term. Overholding is when that tense and watchful state we talked about, it just doesn't scale back when it's supposed to. It's when you check things that really don't need checking anymore.
So what does that look like? Give me a real-world example of overholding.
Okay, it's texting your partner, "Did you get there?" when you know the drive takes 20 minutes and it's only been 15. Or hovering over your kid while they do their homework, correcting mistakes they haven't even made yet. It's replaying a conversation you had with your kid 3 days ago, just analyzing your tone, wondering if you scarred them for life because you sounded a little bit annoyed.
Oh, that mental replay. I do that constantly. Or what about the future tripping? You know, your kid has trouble sharing one toy one time, and your brain just leaps to, well, that's it. They're going to be a selfish adult. They'll never have a real relationship. They're going to die alone.
That is classic overholding. It's letting the future press down so heavily on the present.
Yeah.
Malha says it's when the now isn't enough, so you try to manage a future that hasn't even happened.
But here's the thing. It feels like love. When I'm worrying like that, in my head, I'm doing it because I love them so much.
And Malha would agree with you. That's what's so great about his take. He doesn't treat it like a pathology. He says overholding comes from love without relief, and he argues there's an evolutionary intelligence built into it.
How is driving myself crazy intelligent?
Well, think about our ancestors. They didn't have baby monitors or child-proof locks. The only thing keeping a kid alive was the parent's nervous system. The parent had to be able to hear a change in breathing from across the cave. They had to be what he calls lightly awake all the time.
So my total inability to sleep through the night isn't a modern problem. It's an ancient survival feature.
Precisely. It's an inheritance. Your body is doing exactly what it needed to do to keep our species alive for millennia. The problem is that we live in a world that is, statistically much safer, but our nervous systems just haven't gotten the memo yet. We're running this high-stakes software in a relatively low-stakes environment.
That makes so much sense. But if it's so natural, why do we feel so bad about it? Why is there this whole cultural story that says, if you're worrying, you must be doing it wrong?
That's the cultural misunderstanding he really goes after. We're sold this myth of ease. You look on social media or you read these parenting books, and the subtext is always, if you just did the right thing or had enough faith, you'd be calm.
Yeah, the whole Zen mama thing. Trust the universe. It implies that your anxiety is a personal failure.
Right. And Malfi pushes back so hard on that. He writes that trust does not remove concern. It includes it. I want to read you this one line. Trust softens not when fear disappears, but when it is clearly seen as part of the same field.
Part of the same field.
They're on the same team. Fear sharpens your attention. Trust is what lets you keep going despite the fear. If you only had fear, you'd never let your kid out of the house. If you only had blind trust, you'd let them play in traffic. You need both to actually navigate reality.
So the goal isn't to get to a place where you never worry. The goal is to just recognize that the worry is part of the texture of the whole relationship.
Exactly. It just validates the experience. It says you're not doing it wrong. You're just caring.
Okay, so we've got the early days, this intense physical thing, and we've got overholding as this natural instinct. But kids don't stay babies, they grow up. And Malha talks about how trust has to shift as they get older.
This is the big pivot in the essay. He describes it as a move from managing outcomes to tolerating uncertainty.
That sounds a little bit like corporate jargon for accepting that things are going to go wrong.
And in a way, it is. I mean, in the beginning, you can manage most of the outcomes. You choose the food, the clothes, the playground. But as they get older, your control just erodes. And Mala says the real shift is realizing your job isn't to eliminate risk anymore because you can't. Your job is to stay in the relationship as the risk unfolds.
That is just terrifying because the risks get so much bigger. It's not a scraped knee anymore. It's heartbreak. It's failure. It's the internet.
And he acknowledges those heavy moments. He actually lists them. When a child is sick, when the world enters the room, through screens or the news, and maybe most painfully, when they start to pull away from you.
Oh, that's the hardest one. When they shut the door. Literally or figuratively. When they stop telling you things. Your instinct is to just pry that door open. Demand information. Just tell me everything so I can feel safe.
We want to tighten our grip. We want reassurance. But Mala argues that real trust is sustained not by certainty, but by what he calls return.
What does he mean, return?
It's an internal practice. It's this question you have to keep asking yourself, can I stay open here, even now? When your kid is being difficult or distant or making a choice you just don't get, can you stay present with them? Can you meet the kid who is actually in front of you instead of reacting to the fear of what might happen next?
So it's about checking your own story. Instead of writing this tragedy in your head about how they're going completely off the rails, you just sit with them.
Yes, you resist the urge to catastrophize. And Mala points out that this is where our own past can really trip us up. He calls it history expressing itself.
Oh, this is like the ghosts in the nursery idea.
Exactly. If you grew up in a house where trust was broken or where the world was always painted as this terrifying place, you're going to carry that weight. You might trust too little and assume disaster is always around the corner. Or maybe you'll trust too much, trying to be the cool parent because yours were too strict.
We're all just reacting to our own childhoods.
We are. But Malsa says we have to look past our own history and actually observe the child in front of us. He talks about lived observation. Trust isn't some blind faith that my kid's a good kid. It's watching them fall down and then seeing them get back up and slowly realizing, oh, they can actually handle this.
Seeing them recover, that's a huge one. It's not about them never failing. It's seeing that the failure didn't actually break them.
And that's what gives the worry proportion. It doesn't make it vanish, but it shrinks it down. It fits in your pocket instead of taking over the whole room. Mala says trust settles. It becomes less sharp. You stop measuring your trust against how calm you feel. You just accept that caring this deeply will always involve exposure.
Caring deeply involves exposure. I feel like I need that on a t-shirt. Because that never goes away, does it? Not even when they're 30.
Especially not when they're 30. And that brings us to the final evolution he describes, the long game.
The letting go.
But it's a very specific kind of letting go. It's trusting them with silence, trusting them with their own autonomy. And the line that really, really got me, trusting them to live lives you will not fully witness.
Wow. That hits hard. Lives you will not fully witness.
I mean, think about it. You spend the first decade of their life witnessing literally everything, every meal, every scraped knee. You are the official witness. And then, bit by bit, they start having experiences that belong only to them. Conversations you'll never hear, loves you won't know about, thoughts you'll never access.
And you just have to be okay with it. You have to be okay with becoming a spectator. Or sometimes not even that. Just knowing they're out there living.
Mala says this is the ultimate act of trust. It's trusting that the bond can stretch without breaking. It's trusting yourself to step back without completely disappearing.
Right.
It feels like waiting. It feels like restraint. Sometimes doing nothing is the most active form of trust there is.
It reminds me of sitting in an empty house,
Yeah.
after the kids have left and it's quiet. And you just have to trust that they're okay out there in the world. It's a very specific kind of silence.
It is. And Mala insists that navigating that silence isn't some test of your parenting skill. It's an expression of care shaped by time. It's the final form of that exposure we talked about right at the very beginning.
So if we kind of zoom out on this whole thing, Malha is just taking a sledgehammer to the Hallmark card version of trust. He's telling us it isn't faith, it isn't optimism, it's not a guarantee of a good outcome.
He says it explicitly. Trust is not a belief in a particular outcome. It is the willingness to remain engaged across time, despite uncertainty.
Despite the fear, despite the late nights, despite knowing the world is a sharp and dangerous place.
Yes. Trust endures, not because it promises safety. It can't. It endures because it lets the relationship continue when safety can't be guaranteed. It's the bridge that holds, even when the ground underneath is shaking.
I feel like I need to just take a deep breath after all that. It's so heavy, but it's also incredibly freeing.
It releases you from that pressure to be perfect.
Exactly. So let's just quickly recap the journey because Mala really took us on one. We started with this idea of trust as exposure, not as confidence.
We talked about the early hours, that tense physical vigilance that's actually the highest form of trust in that moment. We looked at the asymmetry, the burden of knowledge that a parent carries.
We normalized overholding, seeing that our hovering is an evolutionary inheritance, a love without relief. And we kind of gave ourselves permission to stop feeling bad about worrying, realizing that fear and trust are on the same team.
We moved through that big shift from trying to manage outcomes to just tolerating uncertainty.
Yeah.
And that discipline of returning to the present moment when you start to get scared about the future.
And then finally, that beautiful, kind of painful idea of letting them go into lives we won't see and just trusting the connection to hold across that distance.
It just redefines the entire game. Trust isn't about feeling good. It's about showing up.
So here's the thought I want to leave everyone with today. We've been talking a lot about parenting because that's the frame Mala uses, but this idea of trust as exposure, I mean, it bleeds into everything.
Oh, absolutely.
If trust isn't about ensuring safety, but about maintaining connection when safety can't be guaranteed, just ask yourself this. Where else in your life are you mistaking your anxiety for a lack of trust?
Is it at your job where you feel like you have to micromanage everything because you care so much about the result? Is it with your partner?
Or maybe, is it with yourself?
Yeah.
Are you judging yourself for feeling the weight of caring when actually that weight is just the proof that you're doing it right?
That's the question. Are you failing or are you just exposed?
Something to chew on during your next late night spiral. Thank you so much for going deep with us on this. It's been a real pleasure.
Always. Until next time.